the terrible screams from behind Nurse Needle's door. Ah! No! Then Weepy William staggered out, clutching his arm and wailing. "Cry, baby," said Henry. "Just wait, Henry," sobbed William. Nurse Needle came into the waiting room. Henry closed his eyes. "Don't pick me," he begged silently. "Don't pick me." "Susan," said Nurse Needle. Sour Susan crept into Nurse Needle's office. "Ah!" came the terrible screams. "Ah! No!" Then Sour Susan dragged herself out, clutching her arm and snivelling. "What a cry-baby," said Henry. "Well, we all know about you, Henry," said Susan sourly. "Oh, yeah?" said Henry. "You don't know anything." Nurse Needle reappeared. Henry hid his face behind his hands. "I'll be so good if it's not me," he thought. "Please let it be someone else." "Margaret!" said Nurse Needle. Henry relaxed. "Hey, Margaret, did you know the needles are so big and sharp they can go right through your arm?" said Henry. Moody Margaret ignored him and marched into Nurse Needle's office. Henry could hardly wait for her terrible screams. Boy, would he tease that crybaby Margaret. Silence. Then Moody Margaret swaggered into the waiting room, proudly displaying an enormous plaster on her arm. She smiled at Henry. "Oh, Henry, you won't believe the needle she's using today," said Margaret. "It's as long as my leg." "Shut up, Margaret," said Henry. He was breathing very fast and felt faint. "Anything wrong, Henry?" asked Margaret sweetly. "No," said Henry. He scowled at her. "How dare she not scream and cry?" "Oh, good," said Margaret. "I just wanted to warn you because I've never seen such big, fat, whopping needles in all my life." Horrid Henry steadied himself. Today would be different. He would be brave. He would be fearless. He would march into Nurse Needle's office, offer his arm, and dare her to do her worst. Yes, today was the day. Brave Henry, he would be called. The boy who laughed when the needle went in. The boy who asked for a second injection. The boy who... "Henry!" said Nurse Needle. "No!" shrieked Henry. "Please, please, no!" "Yes?" said Nurse Needle. "It's your turn now." Henry forgot he was brave. Henry forgot he was fearless. Henry forgot everyone was watching him. Henry started screaming and screeching and kicking. "Ow!" yelped Dad. "Ow!" yelped Perfect Peter. "Ow!" yelped Lazy Linda. Then everyone started screaming and screeching. "I don't want an injection!" shrieked Horrid Henry. "I don't want an injection!" shrieked Anxious Andrew. "I don't want an injection!" shrieked Tough Toby. "Stop it," said Nurse Needle. "You need an injection, and an injection is what you will get." "Him first!" screamed Henry, pointing at Peter. "You're such a baby, Henry," said Clever Claire. That did it. No one ever called Henry a baby and lived. He kicked Claire as hard as he could. Claire screamed. "Ah!" Nurse Needle and Dad each grabbed one of Henry's arms and dragged him howling into her office. Peter followed behind, whistling softly. Henry wriggled free and dashed out. Dad nabbed him and brought him back. Nurse Needle's door clanged shut behind them. Henry stood in the corner. He was trapped. Nurse Needle kept her distance. Nurse Needle knew Henry. Last time he'd had an injection, he'd kicked her. Dr. Dettol came in. What's the trouble, nurse? She asked.
Him? Said Nurse Needle. He doesn't want an injection.
Dr. Dettol kept her distance. Dr. Dettol knew Henry. Last time he'd had an injection, he'd bitten her. Take a seat, Henry, said Dr. Dettol. Henry collapsed in a chair. There was no escape. What a fuss over a little thing like an injection, said Dr. Dettol. Call me if you need me, she added, and left the room. Henry sat on the chair, breathing hard. He tried not to look as Nurse Needle examined her gigantic pile of syringes. But he could not stop himself peeking through his fingers. He watched as she got the injection ready, choosing the longest, sharpest, most wicked needle Henry had ever seen. Then Nurse Needle approached, weapon in hand. "Him first!" shrieked Henry. Perfect Peter sat down and rolled up his sleeve. "I'll go first," said Peter. "I don't mind." "Oh," he said, as he was jabbed. "That was perfect," said Nurse Needle. "What a good boy you are," said Dad. Perfect Peter smiled proudly. Nurse Needle rearmed herself. Horrid Henry shrank back in the chair. He looked around wildly. Then Henry noticed the row of little medicine bottles lined up on the counter. Nurse Needle was filling her injections from them. Henry looked closer. The labels read, "Do not give injection if a child is feverish or seems ill." Nurse Needle came closer, brandishing the injection. Henry coughed. And closer. Henry sneezed. And closer. Henry wheezed and rasped and panted. Nurse Needle lowered her arm. "Are you all right, Henry?" "No," gasped Henry. "I'm ill. My chest hurts, my head hurts, my throat hurts." Nurse Needle felt his sweaty forehead. Henry coughed again, a dreadful, throaty cough. "I can't breathe," he choked. "Asthma." "You don't have asthma, Henry," said Dad. "I do too," said Henry, gasping for breath. Nurse Needle frowned. "He is a little warm," she said. "I'm ill," whispered Henry pathetically. "I feel terrible." Nurse Needle put down her syringe. "I think you'd better bring him back when he's feeling better," she said. "All right," said Dad. He'd make sure Henry's mother brought him next time. Henry wheezed and sneezed, moaned and groaned all the way home. His parents put him straight to bed. "Oh, Mum," said Henry, trying to sound as weak as possible. "Could you bring me some chocolate ice cream to soothe my throat? It really hurts." "Of course," said Mum. "You poor boy." Henry snuggled down in the cool sheets. Ah, this was the life. "Oh, Mum," added Henry, coughing. "Could you bring up the TV, just in case my head stops hurting long enough for me to watch?" "Of course," said Mum. Boy, this was great, thought Henry. No injection, no school tomorrow, supper in bed. There was a knock on the door. It must be Mum with his ice cream. Henry sat up in bed, then remembered he was ill. He lay back and closed his eyes. "Come in, Mum," said Henry hoarsely. "Hello, Henry." Henry opened his eyes. It wasn't Mum.